All right, Marty.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
My
doing
pleasure.
This with me. And I have to tell you, it's a little bit intimidating having you here because you are pretty much the undisputed master of sitting in a chair across from another person talking while cameras roll. You know, I mean, I saw you on Kimmel a few months ago, and you killed it. I mean, you had him on the floor, and I don't think he was expecting it because for a while he kept trying to go somewhere that he had prepared, and you were just killing him. And you know, it made me wonder, like, do you prepare for a late night talk show appearance like you would anything else?
Oh, completely.
You do?
Yeah, you do. I remember when I first started doing talk shows. It was like in 1982. I'd been asked to go on Dave Letterman's show. He'd just been on for a couple of months, the old show.
Yeah, at 12:30.
Yeah, and I was in SCTV, and I would like watch the shows, and I'd think, oh, I know what it is. So the idea is that you've got to be do an impersonation of yourself relaxed at a party or a dinner party when you're loose and you're in a role. And it's got to be manufactured because you have an audience, you're on television, and you have 6 minutes or something then. And you kind of go, but that's what you have to aim for, and you may not achieve it right away. But so one of the ways to get there is to feel confident.
Right, right.
And I always think confidence is the most important thing that fuels everything else. So if you walk out there and you know that you have some solid opening jokes, a couple of great stories, and you even know how to segue a joke that's planned, you know, into the story, you may not hit any of this stuff, but you'll walk out with the confidence of saying, I'm prepared for something, and then that confidence will create this looseness. Because ultimately the audience, especially if you're known to them, they don't care if every joke works. They just want to see you relax. They don't want to see you nervous.
Right, right.
Oh, this works. You know, they don't want that.
Letterman once said about you, he said, I love having Marty on because I don't have to do any work.
Well, he and I have a long history of chatting in these chairs.
No, you know, it's interesting. Like, I think that kind of thing is so vibey, too, because we're all funny occasionally. Everyone has their moment where it's all working. But it's kind of like magic. It doesn't, I can't make it appear.
If you're doing a show that's edited,
yeah,
like Bob Costas used to do a late night interview show in the 90s, and their premise was you just filmed, and then he cut it down. Well, you don't have to prepare anything for that because you know, hey, you know, within an hour you're going to get 11 minutes.
Right.
But most shows, you're out. They're not talk shows. That's Charlie Rose.
Sure.
What Letterman's doing, or Jimmy, or Jay, or all those guys, are variety shows. You're there to entertain.
Yeah.
And if you look at an old Tonight Show from Johnny Carson's era, you know, they would have authors on, and the conversation was much calmer, and it was less, you know, because there was no company. Who were you going to turn to?
Right.
On the bus, there was nothing to turn to.
You turned
and you had to walk across the room to turn, remember?
Right, right.
That was a drag. David Steinberg, the comedian, once said to me that like in the 60s, when he was on Johnny Carson all the time, he said literally, you would walk down the street and everyone, hey, saw you on Johnny last night. Everyone had seen it.
That's all they watched.
It's all they had.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you were young, was there kind of a gold standard talk show performer guest that you always thought every time they were just gold?
Well, certainly we were talking earlier, Don Rickles. When Don Rickles was on the Carson show, I wasn't going to not see that. And it couldn't VCR in those days. So I definitely, I was good at Don Rickles and you know, anyone, Jerry Lewis, all the funny people who were big stars. You know, when Johnny Carson first started, and he followed Jack Parr.
Yeah.
And Jack Parr, who had the Tonight Show from 57 to 62, and then Carson took over. But the huge stars didn't go on the Tonight Show. They didn't go on anything. They didn't go on the Today Show. You only saw them at the Academy Awards.
Interesting.
So the accessibility of them was, it kept them kind of otherworldly. They were beyond just the mere mortals that would appear on television. And then Parr left in '62 and started on NBC a Friday night show. It was on for 3 years, just Friday, 10 to 11, prime time. And then he would get the big stars. Then people like Richard Burton would go on and stuff like that. But they wouldn't go on The Tonight Show.
What do you think changed that?
I guess it was just junkets and
Right.
and accessibility. So suddenly, if you know, Robert Downey is doing a movie, you're going to see him all over. But there was a time you only saw Burt Lancaster at the Oscars.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess going back to that Kimmel performance, it seemed like, though you may have prepared some stories and jokes, it seemed like you just went off on a very improvisational.
Oh, absolutely. No. Don't get me wrong. The preparation puts you in the zone of confidence.
Okay.
The ideal is that you go out there and you hit very little of it. That confidence zooms you out to another zone. Because if, in fact, you go out there and you just hit your prepared stuff, that's not any good either. Then it looks like you're doing part of your act or something.
Right.
And the person in that chair could be anybody. Because what you want to do is create a sense of it's a real team work going on.
Right. No, it was like watching two professionals, you know, lob a tennis ball back and forth. I mean, it was.
But
it
I
was
know
amazing.
Jimmy. We're friends, so.
Right.
So like after that show, we went and had dinner, and we had fun.
I also see how seamlessly, you know, you have so many points of reference. You really studied performers way back before your generation as well. You know, so you can go and do an impression from someone that hasn't been on television for 40 years.
I mean, people think it's a brand new character.
Exactly right.
You know, well, it's odd, you know.
Like Betty Davis.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like what you know, a young person watching goes, "That's really funny," but I have no idea who he's doing.
But they don't even need to know. When I was a little kid, you know, we had one television in the living room. And so my parents would decide what we watched mostly.
Right.
And suddenly I'm watching, you know, the British author Malcolm Muggeridge discussing why the little ball is such a destructive force. And I'm laughing. I'm 12. I don't quite get it.
Right.
But I'm close enough getting it. I'm aiming higher
Right.
than me, which is good.
Do you like that live television environment that it could all go bad in a second type thing? Like, is that something that is part of, to you, true performing?
Not really. I kind of like to do things right. And I think that there's certainly advantages to live from New York at Saturday night as far as the live energy. But sometimes things happen. You know, whenever I'm on Letterman, I always perform a song.
Right.
And, but one time I was doing this song, Goodbye Al-Qaeda's Rose, a tribute to bin Laden. And so I'm walking over, I'm talking about, you know, we've got that nasty curmudgeon, and now it's, and I go to the piano, there's no mic.
Oh,
I'm supposed to be Elton Johning at the piano. And Paul, I just kind of kept talking and kind of looked over, and Paul just said, "What is he supposed to do, play with his dick?" And then we stopped. It didn't matter. We weren't live.
Right.
You know, but so I think there are advantages to live in that it's kind of, it focuses you. It makes you know that there's only one shot at this. But if something screws up, it's a drag to have to say, "Gee, it could have been great, but the prop collapsed."
Right.
You know?
Sure.
So I think it's sometimes advantageous to have a second shot at something.
Right.
But you know, in movies and things like that, I like to do 1,000 takes.
Oh, you do? So you just like to keep trying it from every
Because I think
angle.
it's all luck. It's all luck to get that kind of great take.
Well, that I was wondering, is it the kind of thing, is comedy for you something that you really design and shape, or is it let's throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks?
Well, I think it is everything, whether you're a movie or you're doing a television special or you're doing, it's all designed for the director and editor to sit there in about a month and a half and assemble all this. So whether you like it or not, whether you feel you're the most powerful human being in the world, you're really just providing different tones of paint to a painter who's going to paint his picture later on when you're not there. And it's kind of freeing if you think that way, because then you try everything.
Right.
And I mean, I've worked with directors who I didn't think were the greatest directors in the world, and I could do a scene and I'd say to myself as I'm driving home, well, look, you know what? I'm going to go and have a glass of champagne because I don't know if this film's going to be any good. It probably won't be any good because the director's no good. But I gave him everything he needed. In fact, I even weaseled extra takes. You know, could I have a freedom take? And I used my charm, and I weaseled as many. So he has everything he needs. Now it's up to him to screw it up.
I think that's an interesting perspective as an actor. You don't have the final control over your work.
You have no control.
You just give them all the raw data and hope that they
have the craft to put it together.
Whereas live television, very different thing. I know you did one season on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And I read somewhere you said that it felt kind of like final exams every week because the time from coming up with a skit to performing it seems so like it happened so quick.
And also I think that because, Billy Crystal was in that season, Christopher Guest was in that season, Harry Shearer was in that season. We all had one-year contracts. So I think that for me, I didn't even feel like, I'm kind of light this week, but that's cool. I always felt, oh no, I gotta. So it was treating every week like a special, like because I'm not gonna be here.
And because there's so much talent, like you have to bring your game up and.
Well, it's survival of the fittest. No one's saying, gee, that's a great sketch, but we don't want to use that because that actor's too heavy. No, if that actor will be heavy in the show because they're just picking the best material.
Right, right.
It's hard.
Did you like the environment on show night?
I've always felt about every job, I like the idea of getting the job. I like the idea of cashing the check for the job. And I love going to the rap party. And everything else is kind of,
It's funny to hear you say that because when I watch you perform, it looks like you are just having, like this is exactly what you're born to do. And I think that is one of those mysteries about comedians because it's a lot more work than anyone ever imagines. And it can be completely not you. And there are times when you have to turn it on when it's not natural, right? And you have to be able to get there. And I would think that
I think that it's just, you want it to be great. And you just hope that the stars line up that it will make it great that day.
Right.
But ultimately, going back to what I was saying earlier about preparation, I think what's great about preparing a lot and being focused and literally so that you can say, I did everything I could do. I'm not a robot. I'm not from another planet. If you didn't like it, well, that's subjective, but if it didn't work out tremendously well, it was not through lack of trying. That's why I was never someone that could have a drink before a show.
Right.
Not because I couldn't handle having a glass of wine at dinner before a show, but it was like, what if something went wrong? You'd have to say, oh, I wonder if it was that wine.
Was it that 5% sharpness that got turned off?
Yeah. However, when things don't work out perfectly, I don't beat myself up. I kind of go, look, I did everything I can. So, and then coding all that is that I do love to perform.
You do?
I do love performing. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun in the moment, and you feel great afterwards, especially if you do a stage show. You feel physically fantastic. It's like you're filled with a sense of accomplishment. You've done a workout. You're a little sweaty, and you're ready for a steak and a beer.
You've had a real talk show and a fake talk show.
That's correct.
Which one was harder?
Well, the real talk show was, I like talking to people. I made it, I was doing SCTV and Saturday Night Live. I was doing everything. Usually the host comes in and he has a meeting with the staff, and they tell you who's on the show, and I'd be in the makeup chair being made up as, Irving Cohen, the songwriter, because we were about to shoot a piece there, and then so I was doing a lot.
Yeah,
I was ambitious.
Well, yeah, I think on your talk show too, it wasn't a traditional talk show. There was aspects of you as a performer as well, and I was like, I don't think Martin can do just a straight talk show.
Well, I think it's important to, whatever you're doing, to create a signature. Jimmy Fallon's done that brilliantly, where he's not doing a traditional talk show now. He's doing a mix of Saturday Night Live and his love of music and talk and his playfulness, and that's why sometimes there's in the second segment Robert De Niro playing Password. Right. So it is. I think that the mistake that happens if people don't try to carve their own signature doesn't mean it's going to work or not, but it means at least it exists in the ether as a piece of art.
Right. What was your initial impulse or inspiration to do Glick?
I was fascinated by, because when I was doing this talk show, this is 99, 2000 for King World, they hadn't really sold it properly. They probably should have sold it more, and then we committed to do it.
Right.
But everyone said, let's just do it. So we were all over the market. We were on at 2 in the morning, we were on 11 at night, we were on 11 in the morning, we were on 8 in the morning. And so I was, and we had lots of, daytime, therefore, placements. So I started looking around at daytime television. I hadn't watched daytime television, and I couldn't believe the level of some of the people who were clearly the boss, but they were morons. And but they had this power. They had all this. There was an assistant scared he screwed up the lunch order. And to me, it became, so Jiminy was not a satire of, journalists would say, I guess you're getting back for all those years we've made you. I thought, no, the journalists have been nice to me. I have no agenda with journalists. It's morons with power. This is not tuna fish.
Right.
I had ordered, suddenly this ass is reprimanding someone about he should be getting the tuna fish. So that Jiminy could have been, a genius job of Jiminy would have been, if I were still doing that, I would have moved him from show business, and he now would have run, and he'd be representing the fine state. He'd be in Washington working with John Boehner. And that would be good. Or a dean of a school,
Right. Some people have also said that it's, you obviously have this reputation of a well-adjusted, nice, gregarious, generous person, but the Glick was maybe a way for you to say things you wouldn't normally say, or take it right up to that line. Did you ever feel that way?
I grew up in an Irish household. My father was Irish from Crossmaglen, County Armagh. There was sarcasm, And I remember going over he was raised in a bar that still exists, Short's Bar in Crossmaglen. And I remember I was making a movie in London, and I'd go over to Ireland, and if I had a long weekend, and I'd sleep in my father's bedroom, because it was the same bar. His father went from his father to his brother, Paddy. And one night, 2 of Paddy's sons, Oliver and Patrick, and I, cousins, stayed up till about 4:30 and talking about family and drinking. And then around 9, I came down bleary-eyed, and Paddy was cleaning out the glasses. And he said, "So how did the character assassination go last night?" And so I grew up in the world of sarcasm and funny, and that's a lot of Glick. And but Jiminy never went after the obvious things. Like if you were interviewing a fat actor, he wouldn't say, "Why are you so fat?" That would be horrible.
Right.
But he could say to Steven Spielberg, "When are you going to do the big one, the one that connects to the people?" Or to Mel Brooks, "What's your big beef with the Nazis?"
Right.
That's fine.
Right. And did you find that, because I think the one that really blew me away was Alec Baldwin, because he seemed as prepared and on parallel.
A lot of that was, Alec was almost atypical, because a lot of people I knew, and so they felt safe, and they just knew that what the premise was. Alec, we do a couple of passes. And after the first pass, Alex said, why don't you ask me about women? Ask me about a whole bunch of different women. So he had an idea. And so the premise was that I'd say, do you know Barbara Boxer? Had her. So every woman I would mention, he'd had.
Right.
You had Barbara Boxer. What do you want me to do? She's knocking at your door at 2 in the morning saying, I got to get in there. I mean, you respond. Diane Feinstein did it. So
Exactly.
that, but it was his idea.
It was.
Yeah.
Before, because you didn't know him going in, right? Like you knew some of these other guys.
I'd met him, but I didn't know him.
Right. Was there ever intimidation on that? Like, was it more nerve-wracking to do someone like Alec than doing someone you'd known for a long time?
I don't know if the word is nerve-wracking. Obviously, if you're doing John Lovitz, it's different. But Alec, I knew, we have a lot of mutual friends. I knew that he was a great guy. And I knew he'd be playful and loose, and he came in with lots of energy, and he was he loved the Glick character. It was pretty easy. I don't think that there was particularly times when I'd get nervous, because also it wasn't live. It wasn't live.
Right.
You could always just...
You're doing a long stretch of a show, and you're in that character for a long time. At some point, do you start answering as him? I mean, is it... they say when you really know a language, you dream in that language.
Oh, no. It was not that as much as, it was all improvised, Jiminy Glick. And so I must admit, it was bizarre when I would see the tapes back and I'd think, boy, I've really lost myself in this guy. Like, I'm using expressions that I've never used. I take great umbrage. Never used that.
Right.
I'm quoting random people from, And so I think on that level, it was kind of, in a way, fascinating for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that you'd be in there for so long and you'd finish for the day. Was it kind of like a process to get out of it?
No. In fact, I would, we'd break for lunch and I'd take the fat suit off and I'd have a bathroom, but I'd show the face. And forget I had the face on, and I'd be talking to someone. And it's like years ago when we did SCTV, Rick Moranis was the only single guy in the show. Mm-hmm. And there'd be like a beautiful actress, on the show, and he'd like go over and, so, you live in Toronto a long time? And forgetting that he had like one eye up here and a bald pate, because you forget.
Right,
You're in it for so long, you just forget it.
Once you decide, okay, I'm going to do this character, I'm going to create the show, do you workshop him or woodshed at home alone a lot?
It changes. I remember the first time I did Jiminy Glick, it was during the talk show. And I just thought, oh, this is a great way to get more celebrities on the show. You can go to a junket, you can, and to create your own man on the street kind of thing, but it's you. Normally it would be someone else you'd cast, but it would be me. That's good.
Was there a freedom of them to answer to Jiminy that they'd say things that normally they wouldn't say?
Well, I don't know. I always would tell, people would, I remember Steven Spielberg, who's an old friend of mine, would say, he hadn't done a talk, well, he'd done my talk show. Right. In '99, and now this was 2001, he was doing Primetime Glick. But the reality is the only other time he'd ever done a talk show was Dinah back in the 70s. He just doesn't, you don't see Steven showing up anywhere. And so he was a little, he said, how do I play? What do you want me to play? I said, just pretend that you're doing a junket and a guy's come in and you just have to go with it. He's a powerful guy, but he's a moron with power. And so you don't do anything. I mean, just respond as if, Steve Martin, I remember we did one and in Goldie Hawn too, and they really treated Jiminy like, oh, Goldie would say, oh, Jiminy, you're so wise, but you always have been. I remember Tom Hanks came on and Tom said, you know what, Jiminy, I miss? Your daytime show, your old daytime show.
So he would give you...
And in the world of improvisation, you can't deny anything.
Right.
Because if I say, I never had a talk show,
it's dead.
Dead.
Right.
And so I just, oh, I missed that show too. We did it at the Beverly Garland Hotel, and she would come in the stupor and ask us to do. Now that was part of Jiminy's history. Now he had a daytime talk show.
What is going on that very moment in your mind when he throws something at you? Like do the wheels start spinning and you're like, oh,
I think
or is it just all within the character and you just?
I think you're just in the character and it just rolls out.
But that's something that's, I mean, you prepare your whole life to be able to do that.
I was actually, when I was first approached to joining Second City in Toronto, when it came to Toronto, I had, it was the spring of '73, and a whole bunch of us had done the show Godspell for a whole year. Gilda Radner and Eugene Levy and Paul Schaefer, all those guys, and Dave Thomas. But now, Second City, and they were all excited, and Gilda was excited. And I didn't audition for it because I thought, you know, fear, obviously, but it was also this idea of, I've always been kind of a funny guy, but now to be funny under pressure, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. So I waited a couple of years before joining it. So I finally joined in '77 in Toronto, and it was amazing that you could just be in the scene, playing it kind of real, but with attitude, and suddenly things would come out of your mouth, and you wouldn't even know why the audience was laughing. And if you heard a tape back, because they used to do audio tapes back then. Now they do videotapes. You'd hear and say, I get why that would be funny. Or you'd say to someone, why did they laugh there?
Yeah.
Well, because your reaction was so kind of nothing, and you know what I mean? It was just like, now you're in a role, and you're just, and so I realized with improvising, you could just speak. And because you didn't have to do jokes, you just speak.
And back to that confidence thing.
Yeah. And the more that works, the more you become a little...
Right.
What happens with Second City is that people leave, and then they come back a couple of years later, and the cast will say, oh, we're so thrilled you're here. Would you come up and do the set, an improvisational set? And if you say no, then you let more grass grow, then you never, ever go again because you're now scared.
I would think it'd be like if you were a motorcycle racer or something, if you walked away for 6 months, it'd be that much scarier to go back and go up to full speed.
I think it's, you know, for me, I always, you know, I don't tour as much as I'll book concerts, and I like to do a couple a month. It always keeps me, you know, because again, they don't care if every joke works, but they'd like to see that you are loose and, and that they can walk away and say, well, I don't know, I felt like I had to hang with that guy.
So comedy's a muscle for sure. It's something that
Yeah.
And when you, is there a lot of solitary time in the preparation where you just kind of have to go in a room by yourself and work stuff out? Do you tape it? Like, what's the process for putting together a show like that, like a concert?
You know, it's chunks, and it's a board, and it's cards, and you move it around, and it's that. And then, but for me, I like to, that hour before, just kind of focus, go over my script, go over the stuff, practice in the mirror, but I don't want to be talking to people about a ball game or something.
Do you ever test it? Do you ever bring someone to see it before you take it out or try out material?
No, the audiences tell you, you know.
Yeah.
When they're booing, you respond.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm asking is if you've got, say, a whole new bit or a whole new something, a character, something you've worked on, do you test it someplace before you take it live?
Well, it would depend. I wouldn't take it live to New York City.
Right.
But if I was in a friendly atmosphere and a low pressure atmosphere, venue, and I could say to them, hey, by the way, I'm trying this stuff out, so if you don't like it, don't hate me. I'm working. Just let them in on it. You know.
You mentioned Godspell, and obviously that cast of that one production, every single one of those people went on to amazing fame. And
Andrew Martin just won the Tony Award.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of legendary about that is how, you know, you took a few more years to go full force at it, while other people just took off and went. And I read something about there being a moment where you questioned yourself and watched the success of Bill Murray and the success of, you know, people that had gone off to New York and everything. And I wondered at that moment if, because you said earlier, you said something about, you know, maybe I'll go to med school, maybe I'll do this. Did you have a plan B? Or did you, were you practical about it, or was it?
I was very practical about it.
You were?
I knew right away that the likelihood, I wanted to be successful.
Okay.
And I wanted to have money. I wanted to be able to take my kids on vacation. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be struggling and broke at 38. So when I knew that instinctively that the likelihood of success was so remote, but I knew that at the age of 50, I wanted to be able to look in the mirror and say, well, maybe you should have tried being an actor. Oh, yeah, that's right. You did try being an actor and you were unsuccessful. Oh, that's right. Okay, good. But at least I checked it off. And so what I did when I left, I did 4 years of university. And then before embarking on a master's in social work, I was now a social worker, which was my plan, I went to, I took a year off. And it was like, I was doing plays and it was so obvious that I should do it. The answer was right here, but I was looking around. I talked to all my professors, what do you think? All my siblings, what do you think? And I gave myself a year. And I thought, if I can't make a living in a year, then I'll go back to school. And if I can, I'll be open to renewing my contract with myself.
Really?
Yeah. So I kept renewing it. I'm still renewing it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Was there a point when you felt like, okay, I belong in a room with anybody, I made it, I'm successful? Or do you still feel like you're renewing that contract?
Well, I don't think I'm renewing the contract as much as, but I don't feel like I did it. No.
You don't?
No, I don't think anyone does. There's no one. I was interviewed once by someone who asked this same kind of question, but said, you have to, but didn't quite, it was hard for him to swallow that I didn't feel that. And then I said, you think Larry David walks around feeling like he owns L.A.? And he said, he has to some degree. He does. And next day I saw Larry and told him that. This is the craziest thing in the world. Are you kidding? I don't even know why I even have enough to pay for this dinner, you know. People are working, as long as they're working, on what they're doing right now. And they're filled with the same apprehension and the same questioning. Do I have the ability? Will it work? Am I over my head? Why did I take this on? If I only had a magic button I could press and undo this whole decision. To me, it hasn't changed since Godspell.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, I was thinking about that, how, you know, there's the saying, life is short. But the truth is, life can feel really long when you have to keep on kind of one-upping yourself or finding new ways to, you know, do your thing and make it, make it viable.
Yeah, and I think you want to keep, if you're interested in something, then it's a whole new thing. Tom Hanks has done a play this year, the first play in his professional career, let alone the first play on Broadway. And there's no one really more successful or more famous than Tom, but this made him feel like a little kid. The first show I did in New York was a musical, The Goodbye Girl, with Bernadette Peters. And Neil Simon, you know, he wrote it, and he would be there every day of rehearsal and every preview, as the playwright is, and he would say, that line doesn't work, try this line. And he'd say, oh, how about this line? Because he's always writing lines. And so I'd have it written all over. And
oh, yeah.
He said, do you think you can try one more tonight? I said, sure. And it would make him laugh. So he'd laugh so hard. This is insane. You're going to forget everything. No, I'll be fine. But what would happen is that you'd remember the new lines, you'd forget the old ones. And sometimes you just go blank because your brain is too busy thinking about the new lines coming up. And whenever I would go blank during previews or something in Chicago before I went to New York, I would then just start making up stuff. And then I'd look over Burnett, and she was completely hysterical because she knew that I had forgotten. And it's not that these lines didn't make sense. It's just she found it hysterical, and that's, of course, what the audience loved the most.
No kidding. So you didn't feel like you were throwing her under the bus, like, oh, God.
Oh, I didn't even know she was on the stage. I was trying to survive. I couldn't remember what I was supposed to say.
Do you remember a time ever when it just, everything failed you on stage? And
There was one when I was doing a show, this is now 7 years later, Little Me on Broadway. And in the previews, I did freak myself out for 2 shows in a row by thinking, because I'd play 9 characters, there's so much I had to learn, and thinking, gee, I hope I don't forget, I hope I don't forget. And even this kind of running conversation was happening as I was doing scenes. And I was like, and at one point I did blank. But it lasted 12 seconds, but it seemed like it was 12 days.
and it's that thing where you're like, I'm never going to get it back, right?
You can't imagine it. But somehow someone says something and you're back.
Did you have someone that you kind of considered a teacher or someone that kind of guided you along the way?
I think my brother Michael, you know, who's a 2-time Emmy-winning writer for SCTV, but he was so funny in the house, and he's 6 years older. So it was like I was the youngest of 5, so I just copied everybody.
Oh, really?
You know, and because I was, you know, the baby, you know, had this extra confidence, but I was copying, you know. And, but I didn't know, there wasn't like a teacher, there wasn't one person. Certainly, you know, as I progressed along, Eugene Levy was, again, he was the one who told me, kind of pushed me to try this acting thing for a year or 2. And then when I joined Second City a couple years later, it was certainly people that I would look like Andrea Martin, Catherine O'Hara, those kind of John Candy, Joe Flaherty, who were so gifted and you could learn so much from.
Just being in that cast of people.
Yeah, Joe Flaherty was a big influence. You'd learn a lot. I remember him saying, I went to this, before I was in Second City, but I was doing a workshop. And he was running it, and he kind of said, you know, you'll always get your laugh if you mime hitting your foot and saying, "aw, shit." They'll always laugh. But don't you want to aim a little higher? Don't you want to try to see if you can do a little better? And, you know, something like that stayed with me my whole life.
Was there a lot of crossover and workshopping going on, like in sort of a writer's room environment? I mean, was there this kind of camaraderie of, hey, let me see if I can get a laugh in this room because it's probably the most sophisticated room in terms
When I was doing SCTV.
What was that like? What was that room like?
That was a daunting room. Because I joined late. So they were already a hit. They'd already won an Emmy, you know. In fact, they won an Emmy. They were nominated in every category of writing. I mean, you know, when the Emmys are best writing for a variety show, they nominate 5. They had nominated 5 different episodes of SCTV. So they'd already won the Emmy going to the first Emmys they were nominated. That was the quality of group, and it was, you know, again, Eugene and John Candy and Andrea and Catherine and Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas. And they were all brilliant. And it made it trickier is that I knew them. You know, they were my friends. So, but I just kind of thought, I have to jump in here. And they were all supportive and helping me and guiding me. And I knew the first piece I did, I remember I'm now at the edit bay with the editor, and I see Joe, get in here, I need your help. You know, I wasn't hesitant to ask for help either.
How long did it take you to feel comfortable?
It was fast, because it had to be fast. Because what happened is that the original cast of SCTV, there were 90-minute shows, and I did 3 with the full cast, and then we broke for the summer, and then Dave and Rick and Catherine left. So I was now just one of 5.
No kidding.
And Catherine came back for a couple of shows, but mainly it was just, now I was one of 5, so there was no time to just be in the background for a couple of years and then move up.
You were right there.
You had to be right there.
And was it like you were living it when you were doing it? Was it, you know, late nights and camaraderie and...
We were in our hometown of Toronto, so you did go home. But it was late.
Yeah.
It was late. And you couldn't blame anyone because you wrote it. So, in other words, if they said, okay, now you're shooting till 11, but you got to be back at 6 in the morning, it's because you'd written yourself something that complicated. I remember Joe Flaherty and I particularly would always want to make sure that if you went past a certain point, they'd put you up in a hotel near the studio. And we'd always want to make that last call to have a cocktail, even though we had to get up at 6.
Really?
Yeah. And, but it was, that was a daunting group. But I found a lot of, then the next year, I mean, I did SCTV for 2.5 years, basically, and then the next year I did Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And suddenly I thought, oh God, I mean, there was Billy Crystal, who I'd known a little bit, Christopher Guest I'd never met, Harry I knew a little bit, but those guys had just come out with Spinal Tap that summer, so I remember going to the movies and thinking, I can't compete with these guys. These guys are like the Beatles,
Yeah. But do you rise up at that point? I mean, did you feel like when you came into Saturday Night Live, is there an atmosphere of, hey, welcome, or is it you got to prove yourself?
No. They were really, really very, very nice to me.
Yeah.
They were very nice to me because I'd already, in a way, proven myself by being successful in SCTV. It wasn't like I was this, kid from a club that someone had seen once, and Dick Ebersol said, I have a hunch.
Right.
They'd already seen me. That was the George Steinbrenner year. Dick Ebersol, the executive producer, who was filling in for Lorne for a 5-year period there. Used to call it because it was the first time that they were paying more money. People were established, and they were being given a year contract, just because they didn't think the show was going to survive. They thought it might be canceled, so he was putting some extra steam to make sure it was successful. So there were therefore more pressure on us, of course, to make it successful.
And that was more like a variety show as well. I mean, there were more kind of pre-taped skits, and it was.
Well, SCTV is a big influence that year, and so was Spinal Tap. So pre-tapes. I remember there was the dress did not go well of the first show, and now it was. They were putting together, but we had this piece called Lifestyles of the Relatives of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah.
There was a show at the time called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It was
Sure.
relatives.
Robin Young, right?
No, it was Australian
Robin
guy.
Leach?
Yes.
Robin Leach.
And Harry Shearer played Robin Leach in it. And I played Nelson Hepburn, Katharine Hepburn's nephew,
Yeah.
who was a hot dog vendor. And Christopher Guest played, Charlie Callis's, he was a comedian's, traffic cop, whatever. The point of it was that the piece was really strong. And I remember saying to Bob Tischler, who was the producer, why don't we open with that? And Ebersol and I went, oh, no, you can't open with it. Why? Well, it's pre-tape. And we open with, we have to open with a live piece. Why? Well, because, so then they all said, no reason. And they opened with the Lifestyles of Relatives, and it made it seem fresh, and and no one cared. They laughed.
Right.
Right. They weren't saying, wait a second, this isn't live.
Right, just because it was established doesn't mean it had any precedent or anything. But when a show goes poorly in the dress, what can be done between that time and when you go live?
Well, traditionally, it is that old thing. You want it, if it goes too well in dress, sometimes the air is a little under, and that's the worst case scenario. But listen, it's everyone's doing the best they can. There's no show on Monday.
Right.
By Wednesday, they're building sets, and by Saturday, there's a show. So they deliberately go into the dress with too many sketches because they know that some are going to bomb. Some that people believed would kill. The audience is going to...
And when you matched up, did you have a writing partner, or was it a kind of thing where you would come in with things on your own and pitch? Like how...
Yeah, well, there are two categories if you're on Saturday Night Live. You're either a writer, performer, or you're a performer.
Okay.
And so some, like the year I did it, Christopher and Billy and myself and Harry I don't know. Rich Hall was in it, maybe Rich as well. They had writing credits. So that meant that on the Monday, when you meet the host, you have to be there and you have to pitch some ideas.
Okay.
Any ideas for Ringo Starr? And, you know, if you're just a cast member, you really don't have to show up until Wednesday to the read.
Yeah, of course, because you're not.
Right.
And who would be the ultimate? Would be Lauren or Dick in that case? Would be the ultimate, decider of who?
Well, the tradition of that show is, because I just hosted in December, nothing much has changed in that respect. That it's the host, the executive producer, Lauren/Dick, the producer, in this case Steve Higgins, but then Bob Tischler, and maybe another writer or two, and they're in the room and they start. The pieces are over here, and the film pieces are in a different color. And Lauren would take the card and say, "Well, we want that. That feels like an Act 3 piece. Let's put that there. We don't have anything to open. What else?
Right.
Marty, what do you like? Anything you liked that you really loved from the? Because it kind of finds its natural energy. It's not like there are 25 killer pieces, and which one do we pick?
Right.
You know?
Right. And was there one or two guests that you felt like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool opportunity to write for them?
Oh, George Carlin was a guest host.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy.
And is that the kind of thing where everyone's kind of, they're stepping up for that week and really pushing it or saving material back?
I wasn't that kind of writer. I was really just writing for myself.
You were?
Yeah. I would be in 2 pieces a week. That's all.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was for you.
That's only because that's all I could do. And if someone else wrote something, then great. Then maybe I'd be in 3. But I tended not to be in that much. I was usually done by around 10 after 12.
Was there the most anxiety like that year of your career in terms of just keeping up with that schedule?
Yeah. It really was, as you said earlier. It is like final exams. I mean, you pump and you pump. And you get it out, and let's say Saturday night goes great, and you go to the party, you feel great, you get phone calls Sunday morning, you feel great, why, thank you. But then around Sunday night, and you're watching TV with your wife, and maybe there's a baby who's crawling around, and you're going, Christopher Reeve's coming in tomorrow, I don't have any ideas. And then it's Monday, and you fake your way through the meeting with the host, and now it's Monday night, and you're saying, okay, I have nothing. I have nothing. I feel like the biggest failure in the world, and 48 hours before that, you felt like, I'm a king.
God.
I remember Billy Crystal said one of the biggest laughs he had that whole year was that he was leaving around 5 in the morning. This is now Wednesday morning. The read-through would be at noon, but he was going to try to get some hours, because the last time you could slip a script, because there weren't no more computers, you could slip a script under the door was 7 a.m. on Wednesday. And then they'd type them up, and the read-through would be at noon or 1.
So that was it?
But at 5 in the morning, Billy's knocking on my office to say goodbye, and he sees me just sitting there, and he leans around to see whatever, and it just open on. That's all I had.
Just a blank.
I had 2 hours.
Open on.
I had 2 hours.
And it was 5 in the morning, and you've been up all night?
Oh, yeah.
And was there ever one that you were just like, I am going to BS my way through this and put the craziest thing down and see what happens? Or I mean, do you remember
Andy Breckman, very funny writer, and I, Jesse Jackson was the host.
Right.
And we wrote a piece literally at 6:15. Took us about a half an hour. And we knew that it would. But Andy said, I don't think we're handing in anything that Reverend Jackson actually would love to do. And I had been fascinated by the word moot. I was using moot that day. So we came up with a piece and where Jackson would say some fact and his answer would be, but the point is moot. Right. It's all moot because blah, 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 blah. And that was the running thing. We put it in, never thinking they would be picked. And of course, Jackson loved it, and it was one of the first pieces that he did on the show.
No kidding.
It was written in half an hour.
around a word that's fun to say.
And it was only so that Andy and I would have a laugh at the read-through,
No kidding.
knowing it, seeing it bomb. But it didn't bomb.
That's got to be a great lesson, though, about not being too hard of a self-critic.
I think it's huge in most everything. I think that people really, if I give one bit of wisdom to my children, it's just be your biggest fan. And then maybe that sensibility will catch on to others. But just cut yourself some slack and know that you're doing the best you can and you're working as hard as you can, and just be proud of that and stop worrying about, yeah, but I'm not as rich as that guy, you know.
Do you remember when you were a kid, the first big laugh you got where you realized, hey, I'm funny?
No, I don't.
There wasn't a party or a moment where you said,
No,
I can make my
I
own.
just remember that laughing and being funny was a norm in the family. It wasn't like everyone was manic depressive, but I was putting on a red nose. Everyone was funny in the family. My father was hilarious. My siblings were hilarious. My sister's hysterical.
Interesting.
And everyone was funny. We made tapes really young,
Really?
interviewing people. The Sleazy Awards, you know, for best pornographic film. I'd be like 11. I have these tapes still.
You do?
Yeah.
Audio tapes.
Audio tapes. So that was just the norm. So when I went to school, I was kind of the class clown if the teacher was weak. If the teacher was strict, I was as good as gold because I didn't want to go to the office.
Right.
So if the second the weak teacher turned their back, I was now impersonating them. But it was second nature to me. It wasn't like one day I got it.
It wasn't, and it wasn't a thing where you're like, oh, I like that, I need more of that. It was...
Well, I think you always like when people do like the funny guy.
Yeah.
Girls like them, and guys want to be their friend. Why not?
They're not threatening.
They're not threatening, and they're also a fun hang.
Right, right. To even go one level deeper, which that's what we do on this show.
Wow.
What is funny? Is it the bizarre in normal behavior, or is it, do you think about that? Do you think about why is something funny and how it works?
Usually out of sincerity comes the funniest things.
Okay.
You know, you pick up your shirts, and the guy's, I couldn't get a stain on my shirt, and he's wearing madras pants and a bad middle that's exposed, and you go, he's not trying to be funny. He's not like on Saturday Night Live doing a character. He just lives. That's hysterical to me.
Right.
Seeing Richard Nixon explaining to America when I was 18, I don't know where that gap of the tapes went, you know, 18 minutes. But there was sweat up here that was telling us he was lying. We knew he was lying. He knew, we knew. Sweat up here, looking very sincere. That was funny to me.
Right.
So I think out of sincerity, and then you can go as broad as you want because there are these people. Jiminy Glick asking the hard questions. Frank, you know, as broad as Frank was in Father of the Bride.
Yeah.
I remember going to a big fancy wedding after I made that movie, and I saw that the guy was wearing embroidered loafers. I thought, missed that.
Right, right. Like you'll always find
someone would have said, "Oh, that's too broad."
You'll find the real thing that's more
Absolutely
crazy. I guess the last thing that I'd love to ask you is if there's anything you haven't done. Like if you had a second life or if you had a parallel life, was there something that you'd love to have tried and put as much effort as you put into what you do?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, maybe, you know, one of these great professions like medicine. I have utmost regard for that profession. I think it's a brilliant thing to be a doctor and be able to save lives and bring babies in. But no, not other than that. Certainly within show business. I mean, I've never directed a movie, and I've had opportunities to direct things.
What stopped you?
Didn't want to. And knowing that you had to want to do it.
Sure.
To make it successful. You couldn't do it because it seems like a good idea now, or the timing's right. You have to really, the great directors are people like Steven and Marty Scorsese, these guys who were 11 and, you know, making little movies.
Exactly.
I was that age, but I was up in my attic performing and pretending to have my own television show. So it made more sense for my journey, but, you know, not the other. I like working with a director where you just free up and you're going to another planet, and he looks at you and says, okay, the first part's great, the second part's indulgent, the third part is horrible. So let's adjust that and maybe try this. Okay, great. And then you zen out. That's, to me, a better process of creating art than being someone who's controlling it all.
I'm very envious of that position, to be able to walk into a set where, you know, everything's kind of been set up for you to perform, and you don't have to worry about anything except that.
Right. Absolutely. I used to think with Saturday Night Live, if it was just about performing material you loved and pulling it off Saturday Night, I would have stayed there forever.
Really?
It was the writing that was just, I don't have anything. You know, what can I do now?
The pressure.
Oh, horrible. Horrible.
It's just amazing to have you on here and talking to me, and especially someone like you with so much experience doing this. Thank you for coming to my little show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. And you know, I wish you all the best. And when you want to revive Glick, we'll do it right here on
Samuel,
the internet.
I'll be here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
To continue the off-camera experience, visit offcamera.com. Get full access to additional content, podcasts, and the Off Camera magazine. Because the best conversations happen off camera.